Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. Hope you're having a good Monday. Happy December. Um, and we've already reached the end of the year. That was fast. The year of twos. We're not going to have this many twos in uh, our year in for another 200 years, I guess. But speaking of twos, I guess we got some leaked benchmark results for the M2 Max chip. And long and short of it, in case you're not going to watch the whole stream, is they're not that great. At least according to Shrimp Apple Pro, who's the one posting these results via Twitter, and several news agencies reported on it as well. I can pull them up for you here. But basically, the M2 Max scored a little over 1,800 in single core score. This is on Geekbench 5, by the way, and almost 14,000 in multi core, which is basically 100 points higher single core, a little bit over 1,000 points higher in multi core. But they looked, according to the tweets. Hopefully, you guys can see this here. Yeah, according to the tweets, at least. 12 cores with 96 gigabytes of RAM. They seem pretty legit. I've been told in the past that there are ways to fake these, so I guess there's always a chance that these might not be right. But leaning on the side of like my own personal prediction, I think they are right because it explains a lot. For one, Apple recently started, a couple months ago, they started applying discounts to the certified refurbished 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. This was first pointed out by Michael Burkhardt. I just want to say thank you to Michael for bringing that to my attention. And typically, Apple only applies those kinds of price reductions right around when new MacBook Pros launch to the refurbished models. So essentially, similar to how the speed tests we saw in the real-world performance of the M2 chip compared to the M1 chip, it's fairly likely that they're using the same architecture. At least that's what a lot of people are speculating on Twitter, is that we're not seeing massive performance gains in this test compared to the M1 Max, which makes a lot of people think this is still on the 5 nanometer architecture. And essentially, when you're building a 5 nanometer ARM chip, you're kind of hitting the boundaries of performance per watt already with the performance of the M1 Max, which I have in the laptop I'm using right now to live stream this. So on one hand, it's definitely a bummer because we were definitely hearing throughout the year that there was supposed to be new MacBook Pros early in the spring, and Mark Gurman even was actually pretty adamant for a lot of this year that there was going to be a new MacBook Pro refresh by the end of 2022, which I always had a hard time believing, but he was very confident about that. I thought next year made a lot more sense just because Apple typically doesn't refresh things as high end as the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. I thought those probably wouldn't be ready until the spring, but if Apple is in fact basically maxing out the capability of the 5 nanometer architecture, and in order to have a significant performance enhancement over the 14-inch and 16-inch models, basically they'll need to get to 3 nanometers before they can release the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips, which TSMC has mentioned that they probably aren't going to have those ready at scale until I think his words on their earnings call about it was like the first half of 2023, which is not a very, narrow, very specific timeline. If you're saying something like the first half, that typically means near the end. And of course, there's all kinds of supply chain issues and shutdowns impacting a bunch of things across the world. So I'm not feeling terribly confident at this point. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I don't feel very confident that there's going to be new MacBook Pros ready in the spring either now. At this rate, the fact that there was a speed test for an unreleased Mac chip definitely makes me feel like Apple is they were close, like they had 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros that they were like prototyping and playing around with, and they probably just ultimately decided after building a couple of them and prototyping them that this is just so insanely similar. This is such a small refresh, it's probably not even worth trying when we already have an existing supply chain that's building M1 Pro and M1 Max chips for the MacBook Pros. And because they're so similar, it would probably be cheaper rather than retool and update all the assembly lines with this new M2 Pro and M2 Max chips. Let's just leave the assembly lines going. Let's not change anything and keep charging full price, I guess. Um, we should out the Ultra and the MacBook, so there's two M2 Max chips. That, I think, is a power efficiency problem, and also the thermal envelope that MacBook Pros are capable of. I don't believe, at least with this current design we have with the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, I don't think the M2 Ultra or whatever would make much sense in it. But thank you for your support for 35 months. Oh my gosh, DJ. He says, is there an M1 Max member badge? Months needed? Yeah, you're at 35, so I think DJ has the M1 Pro badge next to his name because he's been a member for so long. Thank you for that, by the way. But once you hit 36 months, you'll have the M1 Max chip. Once you hit 48 months, you'll hit M1 Ultra, which I don't think anyone has hit yet. I think there's one user that's been supporting this channel for over 3 years, and I think it's Booker Barra. I haven't heard from them from a while, but they do have the M1 Max badge, so I guess stay on the lookout for them. Let's see. Laptops should be on a bi-yearly cycle, in my opinion, anyway. Yeah, I feel like when you do refreshes as massive as the 14-inch and 16-inch, it really didn't make sense to refresh that after 12 months. Maybe not even after 18 months. It might be a little bit too soon. Or if there is a refresh to be done, it's probably pretty minor. Because, again, Mark Gurman kept doubling down on there's going to be a MacBook refresh, but he didn't want to detail what. Like, what are they going to change other than put some faster chips in it? No one had anything. No one was talking about ditching the notch. No one was talking about faster ports. No one was talking about better battery life or thinner bezels or dynamic island or any of that. It was all just, I don't know, chip upgrade. And now we're seeing the leaked results of the chip, and it's barely faster. I understand why Apple probably called it off, and they were like, yeah, why even bother with this? But hey, Golden Face, hey, Daniel Holloway, thanks for tuning in. Let's see. I think Apple could do M1 Ultra and a 16-inch and just be a lot like an Intel MacBook. Well, yeah, but that kind of defeats the purpose, right? Like, I see people in the comments say that sometimes. Like, the M2 chip is actually really fast. It's just the MacBooks they ship it in don't let it get that fast. And I'm like, and it doesn't matter. If the chip is just fast in its own isolated tests, that's not useful. That's not helpful information. How it performs in the real world ultimately is what matters because that's how the chip is going to be used. So if it's thermally constrained by the chassis that it's in, then it doesn't matter if the chip can perform really, really great in the Mac Studio. If it can't perform that great in the MacBook Pro, it's probably not worth it. When do you think the first Apple event will be next year now? There could still be a spring event. I just don't know if the MacBook Pros would be there. I guess I got to think now, what would be ready for an Apple Spring event? I guess we all thought they were going to have an October event, and then they didn't. Maybe there's not really anything to announce. I mean, we've been hearing about the Mac Pro for ages, even from Apple. So I guess maybe the Mac Pro could be ready by then, because there's a decent chance that they'd want to unveil it ahead of time. That's what they did with the last Mac Pro. I think they've kind of shifted strategies, so they don't tend to unveil products and have 6 months between when they unveiled them and delivered them that much. They've occasionally done that, but not very recently. Like, I think they did it for the Apple Watch, and they did it for, oh, what was it? Oh, the HomePod. Yeah, when they unveiled the HomePod, it didn't ship for another like 6 months or something. It took a while before it was ready. AirPower, they just never shipped. So I guess it would be a pretty minor event. AirTag 2, says Model Y Mike. I don't know if there's been any rumor. I haven't seen a single leak talking about what they would change with the new AirTags. Not against there being new AirTags. I have no clue what they would change. New iPad Air. Yeah, I guess iPad Air might be nearing. I feel like we just got an iPad Air, but has it been out for a while? They're all blurring together for me now. Let me look this up. When did iPad Air 5 launch? I'm usually pretty good at remembering. Google says 2017. That's not right. It thinks I mean iPad 5. It was March of 2022. Yeah, to release New iPad Air after just 1 year. That's typically not what Apple does. I believe the iPad Air 4, I remember specifically, I don't know why this sticks in my head, but the iPad Air 3 launched in March of 2019. The iPad Air 4 didn't launch until October of 2020. No, September, I think. Whoa, Piroski. Thank you so much for the super chat. That was generous. Been watching this channel for 6 years. Want to say thank you for the entertaining content. Jeez. Thank you so much for the super chat. That was very kind of you. Um, with that super chat, you could sign up for Tailosive Tech Max. But thanks for the one message. Thank you very much. Um, Appreciate it. Sorry, that was just very, very nice of you. I didn't expect that. Okay, so it was a September event. So there was over a year between iPad Air 3 to iPad Air 4, and then the iPad Air 5 didn't come out until March of 2022. So an even longer amount of time between iPad Air 4 and 5 for them to suddenly jump to a 12-month release cycle when going from iPad Air 5 to 6 might be a little bit. I guess they could do something very basic, right? They could just put an M2 chip in there. Apple put the M2 in the iPad Pros. And they didn't really do anything else with it. They're just like, boom. I guess maybe if people really like the new camera position of the iPad 10, maybe they could try to find a way to get the landscape camera to work with the iPad Air 6 and still have Apple Pencil 2 connectivity, whether that's moving the camera, moving the charge connector. I firmly believe there's a way to do it. I'm not one of those people that thinks, well, with a landscape camera, you just can't do Apple Pencil 2. I'm like, no, you can either move the pencil charger a little bit or move the camera a little bit, but there's definitely a way. Apple just got complacent and lazy and decided not to do it. You might be the only person who said the name right the first try. Wonderful. I feel like I'm always butchering these names, but I love hearing that. Thank you so much. Is there a rumored 12-inch MacBook? Not one I've heard about recently. I think there was a report 6 or 7 months ago that claimed Apple was working on another version of the 12-inch, but not. They said it wouldn't be ready until like 2024 or something, and I think that source has gone quiet, so they probably didn't have anything concrete. Didn't sound very believable to me because I think they were the original report on the 12-inch MacBook refresh. What stood out to me about it that didn't make sense was they said that it would have a M1 Pro equivalent, M2 Pro, not make it like a super efficient chip. Which I was like, if you were making a 12-inch MacBook, you should put in like a chip that's comfortable being fanless, that doesn't make any noise and is super efficient. Why would you be putting a Pro chip into the super thin, super light? Like, it didn't make sense to me. So I don't think that design is coming back, sadly. I want it to. I really like the 12-inch MacBook design. My only issue with that MacBook was the performance was crap. It was limited by the technology of its time. It should have came out way later, but it didn't. It was meant for a later time. But now we're in that time where it would make sense, and they're not using that design anymore, which is definitely a bummer. Let's see. New AirTag colors, of course. Oh yeah, that's true. Soda Noodle says, "What about the Mac Mini?" Yeah, I would have liked to have seen M2 Mac Mini this year. So I guess maybe if they push that to a March event, it could be the event of spec upgrades. But I don't know. My opinion is kind of shifted now because Apple went site refresh recently, which they haven't done site refreshes in years. You know, ever since the pandemic, Apple has been very happy to have online virtual events because they don't have to get a bunch of people together. They can whip up something quick with their marketing team at Apple HQ. So they'd been having some years. They were like, boom, we'll have 3 different events for this season, and we'll have 2 events here. They were very like trigger happy with Apple keynotes all the time. But suddenly at the end of 2022, Apple got very comfortable saying, yeah, we don't need to have an event for this. Let's just do a site refresh for the Apple TV and the iPad. They definitely could have, right? It would have been easy for them to just release a 1 hour long keynote where they unveil the new iPad Pro and the new iPad 10 and the new Apple TV. Wouldn't have been the most exciting event, but could have gone over some Apple software services. It could have had some fluff in there with the Apple TV Plus promos and Apple Card getting the savings account thing. They could have had a little event, but they chose not to. So that's what makes me wonder, okay, if we're now back in the season where Apple is okay with not having certain events, that makes me think maybe we won't get a March event. Maybe the next Apple event is Dub Dub, which is kind of sad. Wasn't iPad Air 5 only a chip update though? Kind of. Like there wasn't a redesign, yes, Alphonse, but they did give it center stage, which was a pretty big deal, and I think that's when it got 5G. So they could, with the iPad Air 6, give it the M2 chip because iPad Pros, Apple was comfortable with the iPad Pros and Airs having the same chip before. They could do it again. Say now it has the M2 chip, and thanks to the power of the M2, iPad Air 6 supports the Apple Pencil hover feature. And there's little things they can tack on in there. They could give the iPad Air 6 make it start at 128 gigs instead of 64 like it does now. Give it a little bit of a leg up on the Pros because the Pros probably aren't selling very well. I predict, I don't know, but I'm guessing that not very many people are buying the M2 Pros. Um, let's see. I feel like the philosophy of the 12-inch MacBook lives on in the current MacBook Air. Kind of, but I still don't. When I reviewed the M2 MacBook Air, I did not find it very light or thin. It's kind of just, it's thinner than the 14-inch MacBook Pro, but I know because when I was reviewing the M2 MacBook Air, I was visiting my family out of state, and my mom still has a 12-inch MacBook. So right there, I had the original legacy, like thinnest MacBook Apple has ever made, the lightest MacBook they've ever made, and I was comparing it directly to the M2 MacBook Air, which had just launched, brand new, just basically unboxed it, and then we drove to my parents' place the next day. And I was comparing the two, and I was just like, this doesn't, like, this, the M2 MacBook Air to me didn't scream portability. Like, when I picked it up, it still felt like, okay, it's got some weight to it, just like any old recent generation MacBook would. It didn't scream like extreme portability to me. But when I used the 12-inch MacBook, even this year, even today, I'm still like, wow, like this is insane. The keys go right to the edge, and you can hold it with your hands because the keyboard is so small. You can literally type on that Mac with your thumbs. And I've yet to find any other MacBook that I can type with just my thumbs, and it still feels somewhat comfortable. So the concept of there being a fanless MacBook is still living on in the M2 MacBook Air, sure, but I don't know. I feel like the M1 MacBook Air being a wedge design has a lot more in common than the M2 MacBook Air, which feels like it's, I don't know, feels too decoy effect model to me. It's the M2 MacBook Air's job is to make the 14-inch MacBook Pro look good because it's missing out on a lot of things. The thermals aren't that great. It's just the colors, I guess, are better than the MacBook Pro. That's how it stands out. Chris Norton says, what are we talking about? Hey, Chris, we're just chatting about MacBooks, I guess, because there was a leak earlier in the week that the M2 Max chip was being tested, and the Geekbench results showed up on a database, and they're just not, they're very similar to that of the M1 Max chip. So I'm fairly confident that Apple tried to make, just like how the M2 chip is built on the 5 nanometer architecture and is not that different from the M1 chip in terms of performance, they used that same philosophy to make an M2 Pro and M2 Max chip, and the performance did not come out much better than the M1. So they ultimately decided that the refresh of the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros were so small that it was not worth even trying. So they postponed it until they could get 3 nanometer to work. Let's see. I'll get macOS on my AirTags before my iPad. How would that? I'm trying to visualize macOS on AirTags. Oh, you broke my brain. Let's see. Does March become VR AR time, or is that a couple years away? That's the funny thing, Roy. I thought someone might bring that up. So Gerben and Quo, as well as others, I think even Ross Young has briefly talked about it, have been talking for years about this mixed reality headset. And the latest Bloomberg report claims it's going to be running XROS. That's the name of the operating system, XR. I guess that stands for mixed, because X and then R for reality. And they were saying all this year, all throughout 2022, they were like, next year it's coming. Or no, they originally said end of 2022, we're going to see Apple's mixed reality headset. Then as we got closer, they were like, beginning of next year. At the beginning of 2023, we're going to see the mixed reality headset. Then a little bit more time goes by. Now they're saying, actually, it might be pushed till the end of 2023. It's like every time we get close to their timeline, they push it back further. I am convinced this product either doesn't exist and someone is completely trolling all of the leakers, all of the sources, or what makes a lot of sense in my head is that Apple is manufacturing something for internal use. It's not something they want to sell to us or market or unveil. It's just a internal developer tool to help their software engineers work on Reality OS. That makes so much more sense to me than what all of the leaks surrounding the Apple mixed reality headset are, which is that it's going to be $3,000, it's going to have 8K displays, and it's, after Greg Jaws said that Apple will never say the word metaverse, I don't think that's Apple's interest. Seeing what Apple has unveiled and what they have showcased and hearing what people are claiming they're going to do with this headset is like Apple just doesn't care that much about VR or at this point even AR. I think that obviously they want a future where you can have holograms and 3D projections on a very small, thin, light pair of glasses that are easy to put on, but I don't think they want something like the MetaQuest Pro. I just have a very hard time believing that. I would like to be wrong, because honestly, I want Apple to go into any new field. There's not that many fields I would say Apple shouldn't go into that. Although maybe I should say VR because I just don't care much about it. But I genuinely just don't think they have much interest in it. And the likelihood of them trying to sell you a $1,000 or $2,000 headset that you can play Apple Arcade games on when Apple Arcade isn't doing very well, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I think it's either a fake story or it's an internal tool. But I really genuinely, because I remember back in 2018 reporting on this same story. It was from Quo and Bloomberg, both kind of collaborating on these reports. They keep saying that back in 2018, I remember them saying that by 2020, Apple was going to release this mixed reality headset. And then a couple more years, they would do glasses that wasn't, a big strap. It wasn't mixed reality. It was just all in on AR. And then it got pushed until 2021, and then it got pushed till 2022. Now they're saying it's getting pushed till end of 2023. And I'm like, I have no doubt Apple is working on something like that, but the likelihood of them releasing it, I just have such a hard time believing. So I guess at one point they were claiming that Apple would have an event in January. Yeah, Ashbian here has read those same reports. He says, I think there will be a January event because of the VR. Those same people that claimed there was going to be a January event are now saying it's been pushed till later, till dub. And I'm like, Alpha says M1 Pro and M1 Max are already plenty insane. Do we really need a new one after such a massive upgrade? I mean, we don't need any of this stuff. I'm not saying we need a new upgrade, but that doesn't mean it's a bad idea. But I just don't think the technology, the manufacturing methods for ARM chips right now is not capable of making something much faster. And that's okay. Like, I agree with the sentiment of your message that it's okay if we wait a bit longer. I don't have any harm in it because it means that the MacBook Pro I'm using right now is still technically the fastest MacBook Pro you can buy. There's not a better one. And after a year of ownership, there's still not anything that can top it. So that makes me feel like, okay, I bought the right product. I got the right model. Same thing I had with the iMac Pro. Back when I bought that, I got it on launch day, and it didn't feel like anything for several years after the iMac Pro launched really competed with it in the same price point. There was the Mac Pro that came later, but if you tried to spec for it, like if you bought just the $5,000 Mac Pro, it was objectively worse than the iMac Pro specs. And to get a Mac Pro with better specs than the iMac Pro, you had to spend like $10,000 plus. So I felt like I got a good deal with my iMac Pro, and I was happy with it. Let's see. Honestly, with the 256 gig 8-core M2 Air models going on sale for $1,049, I don't have too much of a problem recommending the M2 Air. Not everyone needs the extra features for the 14-inch. Yeah, now I think it's a lot easier that there's been price reductions. But my tune was definitely different when it first came out. You know, that you're not going to get huge sales on the M2 MacBook Air when it first launches. But time has gone by now, and to be quite frank, I think demand has gone down. When a product doesn't have a lot of demand, it's more likely to be put on sale and offer pretty big discounts. But um, you are getting awfully close. You said 512 gigs for the 10 core is $1,300. Okay, it's not terrible, but you're getting awfully close to the price of discounted 14-inch MacBook Pros, which I just genuinely think a lot of the features, not everyone needs them, but they are very, very nice to have. It's really nice to have 120 hertz. It's very nice to have mini LED. It's really nice to have USB-C ports on both sides rather than just one. Even if you're not a pro, that's just handy. If you're in a coffee shop or you're sitting at someone else's house, just being able to charge the MacBook from either side, very useful. Of course, probably not going to be done because they ship stupid MagSafe cables with all of them, so you can only use the included cable on one side. Ugh. But I would argue if you're going to take the route of not that many people need the extra features, then I'm going to recommend the M1 MacBook Air, because there's honestly not that many selling points with the M2 Air versus the M1 Air, aside from the design. If you just really want a newer looking MacBook, I guess that's good. But M1 chip is not that slow. And the M1 MacBook Air, you could probably save hundreds of dollars on by just going with that. It's still going to be an LCD. The webcam is still going to be fine. Yes, the 14-inch MacBook Pro speakers are way, way better than the speakers on the M2 MacBook Air. And at that, the MacBook Pro, even the base model, has 512 gigs. So if you're getting the 512 gig MacBook Air, even at $1,300, it's very close. Like, how long are you going to own this laptop? How long are you going to be stuck with those speakers? How long are you going to be stuck with those ports on one side? I'm sorry. It's really difficult for me to, it's like, if you want to take the route of 14-inch MacBook Pro is overkill and you don't need all that much, you can apply that exact same logic to the M2 MacBook Air. I was just talking to my wife's cousin the other day, and she was in the market for a MacBook, and she was asking which one I thought she should get. And I told her what she was going to use it for. I asked her what she was going to use it for. And she was like, mostly writing and just kind of web browsing and light stuff. And she was actually debating between going with a 2018 Intel MacBook Air, because she found one through some third-party site, not through Apple. But she said, I found a MacBook Air for $500. What do you think? And I told her, you know, it's probably fine if you're just doing writing and stuff. My only concern would be that it has the butterfly keyboard, so the keyboard might be less tactile feeling than you like, or it might be prone to having more issues. And I said it does cost a bit more, but if you can find a refurbished M1 MacBook Air, because the MacBook Air M1 version has been around for a while, you can tend to find those for low 800s. And while that costs a bit more, I told her you're probably going to get way better battery life. The keyboard is probably going to be a lot more reliable. And she's not doing anything intensive. She's not video editing or audio editing. She's just using it kind of like a basic laptop. But I told her that I think the M1 version will last you a lot longer. The Intel chips that they put in those 2018 MacBook Airs are really not that good. And I don't think they're going to age great. But she's going to write a lot. So I was like, well, if you really are okay with that butterfly keyboard, it's probably fine. But if you can't afford to splurge a little bit, it might save you. It is future proofing is what it is. Thank you, Scott, for the super chat. What are we thinking the next new Apple product will be? Oh, that's a good question, because we're kind of wrapping up the year, aren't we? Next new Apple product. At this point, I'm kind of unsure if there's going to be a March event. It feels like anything that would be ready by then. Someone mentioned earlier, sorry, I didn't read it out loud, but someone mentioned that probably by March of next year, there will be a new Jesus Calderon. Shout out to you. He said new iPhone 14 color. So maybe by March, they'll have a new green or, I don't know, blue iPhone 14 Pro and regular iPhone 14 to kind of spice up the mid-cycle, you know. They tend to do that. So That could be ready. Hey, thank you, Ben Rayner, for 16 months. My favorite MacBook Air is the 2011 Air 11-inch. That's a very small laptop. Yeah, my sister had that one for a long time. I'm surprised that's your favorite, though. I I never really loved the MacBook Air until the M1 version. I was very impressed with that MacBook, but the silver aluminum bezels and the chonkness of it and the slow processors they put in those things, I don't know. And they were always kind of pricey. To me, it was like if you're going to pay that much for a laptop, it should have good battery life, good specs. And I feel like it never really hit that sweet spot until it got the M1 chip. You notice that in my old videos. I never really loved talking about the MacBook Air until they got the M1 version. A clear iPhone 14 would be cool. Well, I don't think it's in Apple's nature to want to do a clear back because that they used to with the old iMac days, right? But even the new colorful iMac didn't do that. Um, Burkhart says, I mainly like my M2 Air because of the newer design, bigger screen / thinner bezels are cool, and I really appreciate the thinner design compared to the 14-inch. MagSafe also frees up a USB-C port. It does. I just think the market for that is likely not using all the ports at once, but um, it's to me it's just such a weird middle step. And I know you got your MacBook Air for a lot cheaper than most would, so that probably makes it more enjoyable for you. Um, iPhone SE4, no, that's not rumored till 2024 actually. No one has claimed that there's a new iPhone SE coming early 2023. Sorry, I need to answer your question, Scott. He's asking me what the next new Apple product is. I wouldn't be shocked if they did a site refresh in March. Maybe not an event, but like someone mentioned earlier, you could technically upgrade the iPad Air 6, just throw in an M2 chip. It's a very small upgrade, but I really don't know what else you can do with the iPad Air, right? I mean, Apple's already been very boring and maxed out basically all the hardware with the iPad Pros. They've given it mini LED. They've given it M2 chips now. They've given it 5G and dual cameras and ProRes video recording. Maybe that's what they'll do. They'll say that iPad Air 6 supports ProRes video recording when you download a third-party app or something annoying like that. So it would not really justify having an event, but they could also refresh the Mac Mini, give that an M2 chip finally. Wouldn't be that exciting, but that's usually what spring events are for. Any kind of spring refresh is not really for major announcements. The March 2021 keynote was very rare. That usually doesn't happen. The March 2021 spring loaded event was packed. We got new Apple TV, new Siri remote, new we got the new AirTags, we got the new iMac. There was a bunch of stuff that came out at that event. That is not typical for a spring release. With all of the production issues Apple's having, and the fact that they're having a hard time scaling up the performance of the M2 chip, feels like they're just kind of overclocking the 5 nanometer architecture, and 3 nanometer just isn't quite there yet. So we're in this kind of weird stopgap stage where there's not too much Apple can do within the next 6 months. Uh, Obviously, there's going to be a dub. There has to be one every year. There's basically one. Whether or not there will be hardware at that dub, different story. But I do think that the Mac Pro would probably be around ready for unveiling, at least by June. Oh, that's right. The iMac exists too. I try to pretend it doesn't exist, but Burkhardt says the next Apple product will be an M2 iMac refresh. Not much to suggest that, but some slightly different colors. M2, new USB-C Magic accessories. Oh, that's true. I would love that. Trying to get ready for the big EU mandate. Start switching the Magic mice and the Magic keyboards over to Type-C. Kind of doing that around the same time as the new Mac Pro would make sense too. Yeah, the M2 Mac Mini should have happened this year. I'm kind of surprised it didn't. HomePod 2. I still can't visualize them going back to the original HomePod like that. That was very good sounding, but it was just so expensive. They can't enter the HomePod space in that price again. Do you have to use Apple Butterfly keyboard? Did you have to use the Apple Butterfly keyboard replacement program? No, I never had any issues with my Butterfly keyboards. I don't have any now, but I did buy a 15-inch MacBook Pro that had the Butterfly keyboard, and it always worked fine. I think there may have been a handful of times where it felt a little sticky, but I just wiggled the key around and then it was fine. Nothing massive like made the MacBook unusable. Um, a new monitor would be nice. I feel like if the Pro Display XDR is ready to be refreshed, it would be alongside the new Mac Pro. They're probably not going to release that separately. But all of these things are rumored to not be ready by the spring. So it's hard to say what the first will be. But hey, Jonathan, thank you for joining Tailosive Tech Plus for the past 3 months. That's nice of you. I appreciate it. Let's see. Juan Abraham says, I spent close to $4,000 because I needed it in my current MacBook Pro, and Apple wants to give me $175. At what point does a company say, okay, that offer is offensive, just say we don't accept trade-ins? Thoughts? Uh, I mean, it's in the company's interest to try to make the trade-in offer work, so I don't know what Mac you were plugging in. That seems awfully low. I bet you bought it a long time ago. I hope you bought it a long time ago. Um, for them to only offer you $175. But keep in mind, Apple is not just selling your MacBook used. They are breaking it down for parts, refurbishing certain parts depending on which one you're bringing in. Depending on how old your MacBook is, the usefulness of it to Apple drops substantially. If it's a MacBook that they can't reuse anything of or refurbish, then there's very little reason for them to offer you really anything for it. Um, I think once you get below like $50, they probably stop trying to even offer a trade in. But I don't know what MacBook you're referring to. It doesn't matter. Like you could have bought a PowerBook that was $4,000 back in the '90s. That doesn't mean Apple's not going to give you any money for that now. It's useless. That's kind of how hardware works. What's my biggest hope for WWDC? Ooh, biggest hope, man. Ryan West asking a big question. I mean, I would go as far as I want them to enter the EV space, but um, that's probably not going to happen. I guess my biggest hope personally for what I want Apple to make is a Pro display with thin bezels, mini LED, and 120 hertz that works with my MacBook. That's not crazy expensive. I'd be willing to drop $2,000 or $3,000 on it, but not much more than that. Because it's rumored to be smaller, Ross Young says it's a 27-inch panel. That makes me feel like it has to be cheaper, right, than the Pro Display XDR. At least it should be cheaper, but I could be wrong. But I would love to get a ProMotion external display that would just match. I just want an external monitor that has the same great specs as my MacBook Pro, and that's very hard to find. Um, Basically, no external monitors right now can match my display specs of my MacBook Pro. Um, I don't think there will be a spring event. I could be wrong, but I just can't think of that many things that would be ready. I don't think the mixed reality headset is going to happen. And the only things that might be ready by then is an M2 Mac Mini, an M2 iMac with some new colors, and maybe an M2 iPad Air. Just be slapping the M2 chip in a bunch of things. Do they really want an event for that? Uh, let's see. Steve says they offered me $35 for an old Apple Watch. I checked back after the Ultra came out and it just said recycle for free. Yeah, that's usually how it works. There's very little things that can be reused on the Apple Watches. Apple only offered me $350 for my base model M1 Air earlier this year. Perfect condition and no issues. Didn't do it since I was able to easily sell it for $700. Yeah, I would recommend that. The trade-in value is not meant to compete with the resale value. Apple's not reselling your MacBook for cheaper. Like Apple is going to take apart your MacBook and refurbish certain parts of it, which often means replace a lot of it. So they're going to have to put some time and money and energy into refurbishing it and then selling it for a little bit of a discount than new, but they're still going to have to offer a full warranty on it. So um, it's not trade-in value is not meant to be better than resale. I don't think anyone should expect it to be, or I don't think it ever will be. Trade-in should be the bare minimum, in my opinion. Like don't sell your laptop for less than what the trade-in value is. I hope that's obvious to everybody, but it's like check the trade-in value so you know, okay, don't sell it for less than that. That's like the floor. Like worst case scenario, you can get $350 back. but you obviously it's an M1 MacBook Air. You can definitely sell it for much better than 350. But if someone comes around in your life and starts saying, "Hey, I'll buy it off you for 300," and you'll think, "Well, it's old. I guess that's the best I can get." No, like check the trade-in values. Make sure you know what your floor is. Um, let's see, Nerve Gear, so I can play Sword Art online. What? What are you talking about? When do I think the new Mac Pro will come out? WWDC 2023 or October 2023? I think it'll probably be ready for at least an unveiling by Dub Dub. Um, Maybe they're not shipping it in June, but at least unveil it, because how many people are buying the Intel Mac Pro at this point? It's got to be sales for the Intel Mac Pro have got to be flatlining at this point. Like when the Mac Studio is as fast as it is, and there's more and more software companies getting on board with ARM and realizing this is the future, this is where everything's headed, let's move on. Like I I feel like it doesn't really hurt anything to get rid of the Intel Mac Pro, replace it on the website with an ARM Mac Pro, even if it's not ready to ship until October, or they can say coming this fall or whatever. It can generate a lot of hype, get a lot of people excited, and you kind of tease them with the specs and the starting price and all that, like they did for the last Mac Pro. But I feel like I'd be surprised if they couldn't unveil it by June. That would, to me, that would say a lot about how tricky the production process is. Like if they don't unveil the Mac Pro before June, then, or at June, I guess I should say, then it's because TSMC is having a very difficult time with the 3 nanometer chips. Let's see. Just random thought, but I'd love an Apple film camera that works flawlessly with the ecosystem. A film camera? Jeez. Can we start with a DSLR and then work our way back? That would be quite a bit. Slaps an M2 in a monitor. This bad boy can do 280p at 15 FPS. It is $15,000. Jeez, sounds like the Samsung M8 monitor. Let's see. Trade-in shouldn't be double the refurbished price. That's 200% for Apple. Well, keep in mind, refurbished, they do a lot of things for refurbished. I think you mean half. They wouldn't. They Apple's. That's why I recommend. That's why I recommend certified refurbished so much, is because they replace a lot of the parts. They're not just taking your MacBook when you trade it in, blowing some dust on it, and then selling it for $850. No, oftentimes they replace the chassis, they replace the battery, they'll replace the glass. Anything that shows even the slight smidge of wear, they'll replace the components for. And they usually replace the charger, the brick, and the cable, and the new packaging and everything. It's not a 200% profit for Apple. There's time and replacement components that go into that. And actually having someone that has to take it apart and refurbish it, take certain things out, put new things in, that's probably the most time consuming part, because they're sold on an individual basis. So I don't think it's a 200% profit for Apple. I'm sure it's not 0%, but what they're losing for trade-in value is just one piece of the equation. It's not everything. Compare trade-in values of other brands. They're not much better, to be honest. It's surprising that Mac trade-in is so awfully low, and iPhone trade-in value is only slightly below what they're worth used. Yeah, but I think there's an incentive for Apple to have a high turnover rate for the iPhone, because that's their bread and butter. They make so much money off of the iPhone line. I think they can afford for the trade-in values to be pretty high, because that means they're getting you in the store, and if we're getting you in the store, that means we're selling you a new iPhone, and the resale value of those iPhones that you're trading in are still going to be pretty good. So the market is kind of dictating, I think, a lot of those trade-in values. Trade into Apple if you're too lazy to sell it yourself. Don't expect a good trade value in from Apple. I feel like most companies don't have great trade-in value, and Apple's not really an exception to that. Imagine a MacBook Pro that can flex and become a tablet. Oh well, that's for when macOS supports touch input. I don't want macOS to support touch input. I'm okay with there being a very touch dominant OS and a keyboard and mouse focused OS and a TV remote focused OS. And iPad OS is fine to be the hybrid, but we don't need two hybrids. We don't need a middle ground on two platforms. We have our middle ground, and Apple doesn't try very hard with it. Um, let's see. Apple offered 114 for Apple Watch Series 4 for Series 7. I took it a week later. It was Series 4 trade in $84. Yeah, that sucks. I hate it when they do that. I think Randy had something very similar happen for him as well. Bradley Silva says, "Did your wife's cousin get the M1 MacBook Air? You told us what you recommend." She didn't tell me. I don't know. I talked with her a few days ago. I just told her if you want it to last a bit longer, I would consider going with this, and she said okay, but she's thinking about it. I never heard the end result, but sorry, I don't have a conclusion to that story. Legalized Comedy says, "Are you still thinking about using a Pixel 7?" No, not really. I mean, the discussion I was having was in previous streams was if the iPhone 15 doesn't have USB-C, I was debating doing a challenge where, okay, if Apple doesn't go with USB-C, then out of protest and anger towards Apple, I will switch to a Pixel and try to live with a phone, because I like a lot of the Pixel's design. I like the camera visor. I like that it's USB-C. I've not been in love with the camera performance on my iPhone as of lately. It's fine. It gets the job done, but I'm fairly confident that for stills at least the Pixel is probably going to be better, but that would be the Pixel 8 whenever that's ready. It wouldn't be the 7 specifically. But I'm not sure if that's the direction I want the channel to go in. I spoiler for the non-channel members, but I ran a poll for everybody on Tailosive Tech Plus and higher, and I just said, do you guys think it would be interesting or fun for the channel for me to switch to an Android phone if the iPhone 15 doesn't get USB-C, to kind of express with my wallet or put my foot down with Apple and say, I really think you should switch to Type-C and it's going to cost you if you don't, that kind of thing. But is a lot of people don't seem to be in love with the idea, and I've definitely associated a lot of my brand and a lot of my channel's focus on the as on Apple as a whole. So if I go start making videos about not Apple products, which I've done in the past, they usually don't have the same amount of interest. People aren't as curious. No wonder, bro, you have the 13 Pro. I tried the 14 Pro. It was not very good either. I took a bunch of pictures with the 14 Pro. And even without me saying anything, I showed a picture that I took on the 14 Pro, just with the regular default settings in the camera app. Showed them to my wife, and she was like, what's wrong with this? Like, the colors are weird, and the focus is off, or the lens flares are weird. Like, I've seen the side-by-side comparisons on different videos and in different platforms, and there's just many situations where the iPhone is not that great a camera, and I've accepted that. It's not like I need to have the best camera in my pocket. I think it's good enough for what I expect a phone camera to be, but the 13 Pro is not substantially worse than the 14 Pro. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to set the precedent on my channel that anytime I want Apple to do something, I need to threaten to leave. Because I know it's going to be very difficult to get out of I'm very happy in the walled garden. I like my walled garden. But honestly, the most challenging parts, which is the reason I was suggesting that I would do this later, because I bought a lot of Apple products last year and I want them to last. I want to use them for an extended period. But if I did switch to Android, the hardest parts would be not being able to use my Apple Watch, because I love this watch and I've not heard great things about the Pixel Watch. So any Android watch that I would get would probably be a worse experience than this. The other big one is the Apple Card. I love the Apple Card. It's basically my favorite Apple service. I get a lot of cash back with it, and I love how simple it is to just have one credit card in the wallet app, and my cash and my daily cash rewards go straight to that account. I know that I can manage my Apple Card from the web. It's just going to be more annoying. And I use AirDrop a lot. And also right now, as we speak, I'm using continuity camera. So would part of the rule of the challenge be I can still use my iPhone as a camera, but I'm going to have a eSIM in my Pixel 8, and it's going to break my iMessage, obviously. iMessage isn't that big a deal. I think people turn that into a bigger thing. I'm not in that many group chats, to be honest. And the group chats I'm in could easily be just carried over to Discord or Facebook Messenger or something. There's just a lot of people in my personal life that are on Android anyway, so I'm in the group chats where there's green bubbles too. So I'm not terribly concerned about not being blue in iMessage. But what does sound very frustrating is not being able to use my Apple Watch, not being able to use or easily access the Apple Card and AirDrop continuity camera. Those things I use pretty frequently. I do use a lot of Google services though, so I do think there's probably some advantages of switching to the Pixel. I like the idea of all my tech being USB C. My iPad, my MacBook, and my phone could all charge with one cable. I like that. That sounds fun. I use YouTube Premium. I use Google Drive. I use Gmail. I'm a YouTuber. I use the Google apps and I use Google services all the time for my work. So there's probably some perks, but ultimately I'm not sure if I want to commit to it yet because it just sounds like there's going to be a lot of annoyances, and I'm not sure how entertaining it would be for most of the audience. I don't know. Like it might be funny for a little while, but then after 3 months, no one cares and no one really wants to hear. Um, you'd switch from your 13 Pro Max? Yeah, in this hypothetical, I'm not committing to it yet, but I will say that if I had to switch to Android, it would probably be a Pixel, just because what I love about Apple is the simplicity and the first party support of having one account that can manage a lot of things. And I'm already using a Google account for a lot of things, so being able to just carry over my Google account to my phone, I like the idea of one company being in control of the OS, the App Store, and the hardware, and even the silicon, which Google is getting into now, which I like, but mixed results on how the Google silicon is performing. But I don't know. I see a lot of comments and a lot of people voting on the poll that are just like, I'm not, I don't care. Like, if you switch to Android, I'm not going to switch to Android, and I don't really care what your experience on Android is because it's not going to affect me. Like, I watch you because you're the Apple guy, and I just want to watch you talk more about Apple products. But I don't know. I'm debating whether or not it's worth pursuing because obviously it's going to be an investment. Um, so are the boxes on your wall all bought products or people gave you them? Yeah, a lot of the boxes on my wall were gifts, but I would say close to half, maybe a little more than half are mine. Um, No, roughly half. I'd say 50%. A lot of them are just from people. Like that's my dad's phone box. Um, that was a friend's phone box that he didn't need anymore, so he just let me have. That was mine though. That was mine though. That was my wife's phone that she still uses. That was my phone, the 10R. I kept that, but I sold it later. 10s Max, I think I traded in back with Apple, so I still have that. I didn't have any of the original iPhones or the 3G. My first iPhone was a 5, so everything before the 5 was from someone else. But the original iPad box is mine. That's from our original iPad. Same with that MacBook Pro. That's the one I'm using right now, and that's the iPad Pro that I still have to this day. That's from that, and the iPad Pro beneath it was also mine. Um, I never owned an iPad 2, but the iPad Air box was mine. Yeah, that was my first iPad. Was the iPad Air. Would you switch to Pixel tablet if Apple doesn't care about improving iPad OS? I don't think it's much better. Like iPad OS has its limitations, but Android on a tablet I don't think is all that much better. Um, how do they even profit from Apple Card? It seems they give you money instead of take. If you're missing credit card payments on the Apple Card, then they're making money off you. But the problem I think Apple is realizing is the Apple Card makes it so painfully easy to stay on track, stay on top of your payments. Like they send you notifications. It's the most intuitive finance app I've ever used. Of all the banking apps I've seen, I've never seen one so simple, so easy to pay off. It tells you exactly how much interest you're going to have to pay. Like it's so easy to understand. how to not pay interest payments that I agree that I don't think they're making that much off of the Apple Card. They do get a little bit of your transaction every time you pay with Apple Pay. They get a little piece of that transaction, but when they're giving it back to you via cash back, I don't think I don't think it's a very profitable business, and that's why they likely haven't expanded on it very much. Um, let's see. Do you ever have the slightest of concern on how dependent you are on Apple for your lifestyle? Even me, who is in the Apple ecosystem, I still think about how it can screw me over in the future. Mm, I don't really think about it too much, to be honest. I mean, Apple is the most valuable company in the world. They basically have more cash in the bank than any other company, and they tend to provide software support for much longer than most other companies do. So no, sorry, Marngel, I can't say I agree. What I worry more about is me being dependent. My income is very dependent on how YouTube performs and what the tech news is. And that's why I've diversified my content strategy a bit, getting more into EV news and getting more into the membership model with Tailosive Tech Plus and stuff, because I'm realizing like, okay, when news gets dry and there's not that much new stuff to talk about, I'm gonna feel it. That's gonna impact me. So, what my wife has worked very hard on, we've both worked on it, but she definitely is the one who kind of kickstarted it. Was every dollar you save is another dollar you earn. So you shouldn't just be, when you're managing a business or managing, even if it's not a YouTube channel or a business, if you're just managing your own personal finances, you shouldn't just look at your income and how do we increase that. You should be looking at your spending. How do we decrease that? How do we cut out things that don't need to be there? So for the past 4 to 5 years, we've had a lot of focus on how do we reduce monthly expenses. We're okay buying expensive things once we have the money for them, because that's a guarantee. Once the channel performs well, the video does well, and we have a good month, and the ad revenue and all the channel's performance comes in, it's like, okay, we have that money now. We can get something nice, or we can get something for the channel, or get something for us. But we don't make a lot of long-term loan decisions like most people would, because they have more consistent income streams. If you have a job with a employer that's pretty big and you know that they're going to offer you a certain amount every year, you're in a salaried position, that's a lot more predictable. You know what you're going to make, so stretching out a loan is a lot easier, because you're like, well, I'm probably going to make about this much in 5 years and 10 years. I don't have that stability. It's all dependent on the news and how interesting my videos are, but there's a bunch of other tech YouTubers out there that are way better than I am at making YouTube videos. So I'm constantly having to deal with more competition, other channels that are more compelling or more interesting, or have better scripting performance or better B-roll, or all kinds of advantages to not watching Tailosive Tech. I see that. So I'm like leaning in towards, where can we cut expenses? That's why I'm not the kind of guy that just buys everything. Like, I'm just going to buy every new smartphone and review it because I'm a tech channel. I could decide, what, the channel's going to be fine and I don't need to worry about expenses. So I'll just buy the new Pixel and I'll buy the new Galaxy. And when I'm done with them, I'll give them away, or or hand them to friends, or sell them, or I'll just buy everything left and right. But we intentionally don't do that, because we realize that you guys are being awfully generous, and we don't want to just take it for granted that you guys are always going to be generous, or that you're always going to be watching videos, because you might get tired of me, or you might go elsewhere. You might not like the strategies I employ. So I'm careful with what we buy or what we invest in. That's why I'm not using the iPhone 14, or why I'm not using a Mac Studio right now, is because we try to treat our money as valuable. Try to be careful with it. So I guess that's why I don't just buy up everything for the sake of, well, it's a tax write-off, no big deal. Um, I'm willing to bet you 3 months of Tailosive Tech Max that you couldn't survive 3 months exclusively using an Android. Chat, be my witness. I mean, people have done that before. I've played that game at I forget his name, but a guy years ago bet that I couldn't use a Pixel 3 as my daily phone for a full month. I've had extended experience with Android phones. I can tell I can get by with Android. I admit that it's not better, but it's not like I can't survive without an iPhone. Like, maybe a different story with a MacBook. there's genuine situations that arise where I'm like, I really need a laptop with this much battery life, this much performance, and I needed to export this quickly. And if I didn't have my MacBook Pro, the quality and rate at which I would produce content would be much less, much worse than what I'm producing now. This is the heavy lifter in terms of tool. iPhone, not all that much. I mean, it's useful and I definitely use it more than any other tech product, but a lot of it's media consumption. I'm just on Twitter, on Discord, looking at YouTube analytics or watching YouTube videos. I do use it a lot, but it's not like I could, I definitely could use an Android phone for like a year. I don't think I would enjoy it. There would probably be a lot of complaints I'd have along the way, but I don't think I would like tap out or be like, no, I can't do it. Um, Apple played themselves. I do love Apple Pay. It would suck to not have Apple Pay anymore. Um, let's see. But I don't feel super dependent on Apple. Like I know I use Apple products a lot, but I let me rephrase that. I am dependent on Apple, but that doesn't worry me because I know that me and Apple have a mutually beneficial relationship. Apple knows that I'm going to keep buying products that help me do my job and help me manage my business. And they I know that they're going to continue working very hard because they have a lot of money and they have a lot of engineers and they have a lot of researchers that are going to continue putting time and money into making better products. So I don't think Apple's going to go anywhere. Like, I don't think Apple's doomed or close to bankruptcy. They're like the opposite of bankrupt. They're like bank lucky. I don't know. Like the situation in which Apple would be in trouble is so insanely rare that I'm not concerned at all that I use Apple products a lot for my life. And I know it'll probably stay that way for a long time. Visualizer upgraded his membership to Tailosive Tech Pro. Wow, thank you so much. That was nice of you. That means on unfortunately not today's video, but the video I do after today's video will have your name in the outro. So spoiler alert, today's tech video is already done. It's already uploaded and I'll publish it when this live stream is over. But so that's why I can't add your name to it immediately, but the video after today's video. So that's a no. But I do worry about how dependent I am on YouTube and Google, I think. Because I feel like Google could do something very quick, very easily that would severely impact my job. Like, I don't know how profitable YouTube is, but if at any time YouTube just decided, hey, we don't like how much server space it's taking to hold all your videos, or we've decided that monetization is too much work, or advertisers do another boycott and we have an adpocalypse and YouTube ad revenue tanks. If something goes really, really bad with some YouTube monetization policy, which is not impossible, definitely when we saw the advertisers pull out back in 2017, 2018, it was like something like that could happen again and suddenly I don't have a job anymore. Like, that's a lot more concerning to me. And I've also seen YouTube make very dumb decisions, so that also makes me think, like, man, what if I just woke up one day and they were like, we've decided that you have to have 1 million subscribers or something to be monetized? I'd be like, wow, I'm screwed. I wouldn't know what to do. Yeah, that's not true. We have backup plans and stuff. I would probably just lean more towards, letting people know, hey, if you want me to keep this content going, I'm going to have to lean more into donations and, paid content or maybe more sponsorships and that kind of thing. I'm not saying I would never do sponsorships if emergency situations like that came up. I don't need to do sponsorships now, but if I had to, I would do them because I would much rather have a YouTube channel with sponsorships than quit YouTube and go find a regular job. That's for sure. Elizabeth says, thoughts on DaVinci Resolve on iPad? Could you run your channel on it? I haven't messed around with it yet, but no. Basically, the exact way I'm using my Mac right now, I couldn't do on an iPad. iPad software, both Streamlabs and YouTube, and when it comes to using external microphones or external cameras, it's just not useful on the iPad. and I record podcasts and I do live streams so much these days, whether I'm doing them publicly or I do behind the scenes streams now for people on Tailosive Tech Plus. Like, I need to be able to show my screen, show myself as I'm editing the video, and I need a good microphone, and I need a good battery life, and lots of ports for all of the things I'm plugging into my MacBook. So I want to reiterate to people that my big issue, it seems like a lot of people misunderstood my point about this. I don't have one single issue with iPad. It's not like you can just, boom, add Final Cut to Tailosive Tech. Add Final Cut to iPad OS. Sorry, I read the thing. Thank you, Piarowski, for subscribing to Tailosive Tech Pro. You're also going to be not in today's video, but the video after. I got to add you guys to the outro credits. So thank you so much for signing up. I really appreciate you guys. But it's not like just add Final Cut to the iPad and boom, now it can replace your Mac. That's not what I've said before, but it seems to be what a lot of people think my mindset is, because they're like, see, iPad Pro has DaVinci Resolve. It can replace a Mac now. It's like, no, there's a huge list of tiny features. It's not one big feature. I kind of dumb it down into the big feature is Mac OS. Because there's a bunch of things, obviously, that my Mac can do that the iPad can't, that are software difference, because we know that the iPad has the exact same silicon they're putting in the Mac. So we know it's not a hardware limitation. We know it's not that the iPad is incapable. It has Thunderbolt. It has the M2 chip. It has a battery. It has a great display. It has everything you need to do what a Mac can, but it's iPad OS. That's in the way. And it's not, again, it's not one pro app. It's not two pro apps. It's like a million little things. It's the way Finder works. It's the way terminal commands work. It's the way third-party software works. It's the way certain file types can't be read on the iPad, and certain screen management doesn't work. External microphones, external cameras don't work as well. It's the calculator app. You know, it's a bunch of little things. It's not one big thing that all stack up as to why this iPad can't be as capable as a Mac. And the reason that I don't have the same belief as others that are like, well, we just need iPad OS to get better, let's just wait for iPad, is like, that's not gonna fix all these little issues. Like, in my view, if a Mac can do something with an M1 or M2 chip, then the iPad should be able to do that exact same thing, because it has the exact same chip. It has keyboard and mouse support. It has a display. Whatever a MacBook Air can do, an iPad Pro should be able to do. And the easiest way to ensure that is to just allow a dual boot method. It doesn't have to be cheap. I'm not saying it needs to be more affordable than a Mac, but man, Lord Zero, welcome to Tailosive Tech Plus. Thank you so much for signing up. Appreciate it. And Marngel's been a member for 16 months. It's that time of the month. Keep up the good work. Thank you, guys. You guys are all very generous. Far too kind. Yoris says, how do you upgrade to Pro? I'm pretty sure you just click the first link in the description. It does have to be done on Safari. They don't let you change your membership on the mobile app, on iOS at least. But yeah, if you just open the link in the first link in the description, it should walk you through it on Safari. iPad OS needs to be iPad OS, not a tweeted iOS. Yeah, I'm okay with iPad OS getting better. I've got no problem with them adding features to iPad OS. I'm just saying, if you're expecting there to just be 1 year where they add everything people love about Mac OS to iPad OS, it's not going to happen, because we can't even get basic things like optimized battery charging working on iPad OS. The development of iPad OS is just so absurdly slow. Like, okay, cool. I'm glad it got DaVinci Resolve. I'd like to try it. Is that out yet? I can't tell. Some people got early access to it, or I haven't been following it very closely. I don't know if you need the M1 chip to run it. Let me double check. DaVinci. If I search it, yeah, no. I can't get it, and I'm not interested in buying a whole new iPad Pro just so I can test it. So yeah, it's cool that it's there, and I'm glad that Blackmagic was willing to add it, but in my view, like, it's just dumb that you would charge that much for a product that is clearly capable of doing so much more, but it's not going to, because you don't want it to, because it's an iPad. It's an iPad. That means it can't do certain things. I'm like, that's just silly. I agree with your take on the iPad. The concern I have is that all of the demand for the iPad Pro to be more Mac-like is a slippery slope of demanding a MacBook with a touchscreen, which defeats the point of having an iPad. I don't think it does at all. I still think there's a bunch of reasons to get a Mac, even if an iPad Pro could run Mac OS. Um, I think it's a very different debate. Some people probably think it's the same exact thing. To me, asking an iPad to run Mac OS is very, very different from expecting a touchscreen MacBook. A MacBook is still going to be keyboard and mouse focused. It's not going to have a touchscreen. And it's still going to be the better value than the iPad. It's going to have the bigger battery. It's going to have more ports, probably bigger display, and cheaper. If you try to spec match an iPad to a MacBook, it's way cheaper to get the MacBook. There's all kinds of reasons to still buy a MacBook and just say that that's the better deal if you just need macOS. But if you're gonna, to me, there's no justification for iPads over $600 at this point. When iPad OS is as limited as it is, and you can get refurbished iPad Pros for under $600 now, I'm like, no, there's no justification for dropping more. To me, you would justify the existence if you're gonna sell a $1,000, $2,000 iPad. Then I'm sorry, I'm gonna expect it to do things that an $800 MacBook can do because it has the same chip. It's not a hardware limitation. Um, Someone at Apple should revamp the iPad OS developer team. It's like you can improve the experience of iPad OS because I'm not in favor of dual boot Mac OS being on all iPads. I'd be fine if it was just on the Pros, or even saying dual booting requires 16 gigs of RAM, which probably isn't true, but you could claim that. You could say only the 16 gigs of RAM iPads can handle dual boot. It's like, okay, fine. So there's still reason. That doesn't mean you give up on iPad OS, although it feels like they've given up on iPad OS now. It still means like you can work on making iPad OS better because most people aren't going to be buying the iPad Pro. Most people are buying the budget iPad and the iPad Airs and the low end iPads. Those are the ones that most people are using. So there's still reason for iPad OS to get better and more functional. But if you're going to put that high end hardware in it and you're going to charge that much for it, don't tell them that they can't do something that a cheaper MacBook can do when we know it's perfectly capable of doing it. Um, iPad is still fanless. Won't an iPad with macOS basically be a MacBook Air with a touchscreen? Yeah, but you can just ignore the touchscreen. Just like you already ignore the touchscreen when you use Sidecar. Apple already supports features where the iPad touchscreen is disabled for the sake of input consistency. Because when the iPad is showing macOS, it uses a keyboard and mouse. And we know the iPad can support keyboard and mouse. So isn't there supposed to be a 16-inch iPad coming out? I don't know if there's that word "supposed to" is accurate, but there has been a couple rumors of them working on one. I genuinely think it's the same team developing iOS and iPad OS. They need macOS developers to get to work on iPad OS. Well, they did share Stage Manager, I guess. I don't know who worked on that, but that was exclusive to the Mac and the iPad and not on the iPhone. Um, if a dual boot, we need Apple to start iPads at 512 gigs. I don't think you need to. It's just an upsell feature. If you want Mac OS, you got to buy the more expensive iPad. Done. Easy. Oh my God. So many new members today. Thank you, Matt Sloop, for signing up for Tailosive Tech Plus. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's assume that Apple does bring macOS to the iPad Pro, which I do support. I'm sure there will be people who will demand for iPads to get the more Mac hardware, and at that point, those people should just get a Mac. That's my argument as to why it's not true that Apple wants you to buy both, and if the iPad ran macOS, people wouldn't buy both. I'm like, yeah, they would. The iPad wouldn't have as good a hardware as the Mac, and I think it will always be that way. I think, no matter how good the hardware gets in the iPad, you will objectively be able to get a bigger battery for less money and a better thermal envelope because iPads are much thinner and much smaller. You can't put in the same cooling system that you put in a MacBook Pro. So if you want the best performance, the MacBook Pro, or the best battery life, and the MacBook Pro is still going to win. But saying that an iPad that's $2,000 can't do basic tasks that any MacBook could do, a MacBook from 5 years ago could do, that doesn't make sense to me. Like it should be capable of that. And I think a lot of people could justify it because now it's a Mac that supports the Apple Pencil, that has cellular, that has Face ID. that I can still take notes on, but still do laptop things with. It's got the hardware to do both, and I think it would be a very compelling, very marketable two-in-one. You could boast about so many things it could do on one product that a lot of people could justify spending a lot on it. I don't think Apple would miss out on any revenue. I think they would actually have better revenue than they have now if they would have been okay with the M1 iPad Pros being dual booting. Um, Matt Sloop says, "Love the channel. Keep up the hard work." Thank you, Matt. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Um, let's see. I love Sidecar and using the iPad as an external monitor. Yeah, I'm glad it's great as an option, but it's almost like insulting that that's um, even a thing. Is like turn your iPad off so it can visualize the real operating system. It's like, wow, really? But yeah, Jacob is definitely onto something. I do think that the team that works on iPad OS is either incredibly small or pretty much the same team that just does iOS, because honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it's even like separate from that, because there's a bunch of things that iOS got that iPad OS didn't get. You know, they still don't give you the lock screen customization. They still don't give you optimized battery charging. They don't give you the calculator app, and they updated the weather app, but they didn't give a weather app to the iPad for years. There's all these things that even the iPhone has that the iPad doesn't, despite having much better hardware, or faster hardware at least. Um, Apple should consider coming to cloud hardware businesses, considering how good they are with devices and their performance. Cloud hardware businesses. What does that mean? I'm sorry. I wish I knew more about that field. Cloud hardware. I feel like the way I understand that is you're offloading your GPU and CPU performance to a computer on a server somewhere. But that's very much dependent on how fast your internet is, and not everybody has very fast internet. Like Amazon Web Services, I feel like that's a lot of back end cloud services. I mean, Apple doesn't even want to manufacture their own stuff. I'm sure it's not a terrible idea to get into, but I just wonder, when Amazon is doing as well as they are, how profitable would that be? Um, let's see. Let's see. The capitalism on selling the iPad is still just ridiculous. The capitalism on it. I wonder what you mean by that. Just the profitability? Um, Let me catch up here. Sigilizer says, "How's the Ridge wallet holding up?" Great. I love my Ridge wallet. They reached out to me. I feel like before they became super well known, now I see Ridge wallet sponsorships everywhere. But when I didn't take payment from them, but they did send me the wallet to test out. I was skeptical of it at first, but then once I started using it, I was really, really liking it. Now I can't use anything else. It ruined all other wallets for me. But yes, it's held up great. Skylar says, "Speaking of YouTube Premium, are you still in on a family plan with your friends? I finally was able to sign up for an annual plan this morning." Oh, nice. Congratulations, Skylar. Yes, to answer your question. Although I will have to reach out to them soon, because YouTube has announced a price increase on Premium that even affects original subscribers. So for a long time, they used to call it YouTube Red, and I signed up for YouTube Red, a family plan, which was an incredible deal. 6 people, 6 separate accounts can all have YouTube Premium for $15 a month. And now, for one account to have YouTube Premium, I think it's like $12 a month. 6 people for 15. And because I signed up early, like basically way before they even launched YouTube Red, I was advocating as to YouTube really needs this. I watch more YouTube than anything. I would love a paid option to get rid of ads, because I don't want to use ad blockers, because that doesn't support the creators. In fact, it hurts them and it hurts YouTube. I was like, I don't like ads, but I want to pay to support the people I'm watching. And I was advocating for that for years, and they finally did it. So I signed up day one, and I had so many other friends and family members that wanted it. So I upgraded to the family plan. But then along the way, they realized it wasn't super profitable. So they let me stay on my old legacy pricing. Um, One person is $17.99 a month now. I don't think that's right. Maybe in a different country, but in the U.S., it's definitely not $18 a month. I feel like I would have heard about that. Um, but because I signed up with the old legacy pricing, they have continued to let me keep the $15 a month price, even though they've raised the prices when they rebranded it to YouTube Premium. They upped it a lot. Now they've reached out to me and said, "We're raising your rates, even though you signed up on old pricing. Like, I'm not going to get grandfathered pricing anymore." So I think it's going up to like $23 a month now, and we have, 5 other people on the account. So I think we've been charging everybody $3 a month. I think we'll probably just raise it to 4. That doesn't really completely cover it, but I don't care. Yeah, if you sign up through iOS, it's more, but you don't have to sign up through iOS. You can just go on Safari and sign up. It's a lot cheaper that way. Um, hey, Drew, could you turn off super chats if I wanted? I could, yes, but I like there being at least an option for people that really want a question answered or really want something said to the chat, having a way to stand out and support the channel more directly to help pay my bills and keep this going as a job. I do appreciate it being there. So I'm sorry. I do need some. I do need some support, but it should be noted that I do profit just off of you guys watching the live streams and watching the videos. You don't have to super chat to help me out. If you're just watching the videos or streams, I get ad revenue from YouTube from that. Or if you pay for YouTube Premium, like Skylar does now, um, I get a portion of that YouTube Premium revenue. In fact, I get better rates when you're watching with YouTube Premium than you do if you're watching for free. So I don't want people to feel like they have to super chat. It's appreciated, and I'm very grateful for it. But don't feel like it's expected or required. Like, I would still do these live streams if no one super chatted. I find them fun, and I'm grateful that the channel is monetized so that you guys can watch for free, and it still helps me out. But yeah, I could technically turn off all ads if I wanted to as well. But then if I can't, pay my bills, and if I can't keep the lights on, then I'm not going to be able to do these kinds of things because I'm going to have to find another job. And then I can't have these kinds of conversations. So unfortunately, life and existence in general just kind of costs money, especially healthcare in the US where I live. And I'm glad to see there's a lot of people that watch YouTube Premium. Thank goodness that YouTube didn't increase the price of the student tier, which is at $7 a month. Ooh, that's a good deal. We should let more people know that the student tier is $7 a month. Let's see. What did he say? I believe few people have high-end iPad and Mac. I think most people have either high-end Mac or budget iPad or vice versa. No, I agree. But I think that even if iPad Pros ran Mac OS, there would be the same people buying the high-end version of both. Apple's worried about, what about, we want you to buy an iPad and a Mac. It's like those people that are the type to buy a high-end iPad and a high-end Mac, they're still going to do that because there's advantages to the Mac and there's advantages to the iPad. I don't think the Mac OS thing would be like, well, okay, don't need a MacBook anymore. It's like, I think those people buying those MacBooks were interested in the M1 Max chip, or interested in the extra ports or the better battery life. Let's see. Premium on iOS is $15.99 a month and $11.99 if you buy directly. Yeah, just don't sign up on iOS. That's a total waste of money. Apple is proving the point that it's not worth paying for high-end iPads yet, introducing more iPads. iPadOS is making it harder to justify the price. As you go up the pricing ladder, it feels broken. Yeah, and it's the only sector of their business, which they showed in their last earnings report. It's the only sector of their business that's declining, and it declined a lot. Like Q3 of last year to Q3 of this year, iPad revenue dropped like 13%. Every other sector, the watch business, the phone business, the services, the Mac business, everything else went up in revenue except the iPad. That's the only one going down. Whenever I tell my friends I use YouTube Premium, they always ask me why not just use AdBlock, to which I tell them I actually care about the creators I watch. Yeah, I know that I can't stop people from using AdBlock. It's not illegal. You're not going to get arrested for using it. But I do think it's inherently evil. Like it's just a selfish way of living life to assume that other people need to put up with ads or support the platform directly, but I don't need to because I don't feel like it. It's a very like if everybody did what you were doing, no content creators, very little content creators would exist because YouTube definitely needs money to support all of these different channels that are uploading content all the time. The fact that I can, for free, just hit a button on my computer that says go live and hundreds of people can watch me from anywhere in the world, that infrastructure is not free. And to just assume that they're greedy and they should just hand that out for free and that the content creators should just make content for free. It's like the videos you find the most interesting on the platform, those are the creators you are hurting by using ad block. So again, I know it's not illegal and I can't stop you from doing it, but thank God there aren't more people like you if you are the type of person using it, because otherwise you wouldn't have anything to watch. The app would be useless. So you're like, if everybody grew that trend and everybody just got on board the ad block trend, the sponsorships and videos would get far worse because that would be the only way for content creators to support themselves. And the back end server maintenance that YouTube needs to pay for and Google needs to maintain would fall apart. So the platform would just get perpetually worse. And the ads get worse because of people using ad block, because it means they're not getting as good a CPMs as they could be. So there's a solution that works when people are either putting up with the ads, which are annoying. I agree. I don't like ads either. But either supporting directly through YouTube Premium or watching the ads. There's a solution where the content creator can be paid, the servers can be maintained, and you guys, the viewers, can have a site with entertaining content that you enjoy spending time on. There's not a situation that exists where we can just eliminate all ads via ad block. That makes the server, the platform work harder and become less profitable, which means that YouTube has less incentive to make it better. YouTube would have more incentive to make it harder to post content. There would be less content to watch and the platform would suffer for it. So there's not like a good healthy situation where we use ad block. So I appreciate people that try to spread the word about that, like don't go the ad block route. Again, if a very small percentage of people are doing it, they get away with it. It's not really going to end the world or anything, but just, I don't know, acknowledge how selfish you are. To me, it's no different than stealing a candy bar from a 7-Eleven or something. It's like, yeah, will 7-Eleven go bankrupt if you stole one candy bar a day for your entire life? No, they'll be fine. Does that make it a okay thing? Does that make it good? No. Sure, you could argue that's technically breaking the law, but I would argue that while it's not illegal to use an ad blocker, it is very damaging to the site. Let's see. Are you using a pro camera or no? Of course not. Why would I do that? I have continuity camera and it's great. Sorry, the lighting's weird. I was relying more on natural lighting earlier, but I don't have a great place for a studio light right here. But you can see me. You get it. Use YouTube Premium because there's no ad block in the iPhone mobile app, which is where I watch all my YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I've heard other people say otherwise, but I don't want to help you find ad block solutions. So yes, I'll just agree with you, Ryan. YouTube shares YouTube Premium revenue with creators. If yes, I have no idea. Yeah, they do. In the analytics section of our Creator Studio, they specifically show you how much revenue you've generated. Here's how much money you've made from ad revenue, and here's how much money you've made from YouTube Premium viewership. So they explicitly explain that. Let me look right here. I have wow, okay. I think it's grown. Maybe YouTube Premium revenue has grown. I won't give you the exact numbers because it's a little personal, but it's over 10%. It's around like 12 or 15% of my revenue in the last 30 days came from people watching with YouTube Premium, which I'm very grateful for. So thank you so much to everybody that has signed up for it. You kind of have to pick a team eventually, you know? Like we've messed around with alternative platforms and where you put your content, but for Tailosive, we just ultimately decided that making our own site or our own app or our own servers is going to be way more expensive and harder to get people to move because we're smaller than YouTube is. Um, uh, don't, Bibazak, don't tell people how to get ad block on mobile, please. I don't want to support that. So I'm just letting you know that it hurts me and it hurts the platform. So don't tell people in the chat how to do ad block. I don't want to encourage that. Yeah, YouTube Premium pays much more than ads per view. Correct. Thank you, digital guy. Uh, we just decided that rather than have a separate third party site to try to convince people to move to, especially because we know YouTube is the biggest video platform and people have a very hard time moving from it, we just need to create a place where you can sign up for one membership and basically get all Tailosive content ad free. So if you get YouTube Premium, then there's no sponsorships in my videos. So you're not going to get ads on Tailosive tech or EV content, or even on the podcasts, which we also upload to YouTube. So one membership gets rid of all the ads and it still supports us. And I really wish, I wish they would offer this, but they don't. I would love to have a tier like for everybody on Tailosive Tech Pro to not get ads on the channel. YouTube, I guess, would miss out on some revenue if they did that, but I'd be okay with it requiring a certain price. But if there was a way to turn off ads on specific creators rather than pay for YouTube Premium, which is probably too expensive for some people, but if they're like, I just watch a lot of this channel's videos, and I would like the ads to go away on this channel, then I'll support him directly and I can eliminate them. That would be really cool, but they don't let me do that. Oh, Jake Gannon says, I have one of your original shirts. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. YouTube Music has potential to overtake Spotify and Apple Music's customers. They took me from Apple Music and I never thought I was leaving. Only downside is my HomePod is more limited now. That's true. I use Spotify because I get it free through my brother-in-law, but if he decided not to offer that to me anymore, I would definitely use YouTube Music before Apple Music because while YouTube Music isn't great and I still think Apple Music is better, it's not that much better in terms like the UI. You don't use, in my opinion, you don't use the music app's UI very much. You basically open the app and you tell it to play a certain album or playlist, or you search a certain song and then you hit play. To me, the way I navigate that music app is not worth spending an extra $10 or 11. Now it's $11 a month, whatever it costs to get Apple Music, it's not worth that much. But getting rid of ads on YouTube, which I watch more than any other service, totally worth it. I also love the offline downloads, especially when you go on a trip on a plane or something. Just straight in the YouTube app, you can download videos, watch them. And fun fact, you can when you watch those videos offline, like when you go on a flight or something and you're watching a bunch of downloaded content, it remembers the watch time you gave to those offline videos and it will add that watch time and those views back to the videos once you get internet again. So downloading YouTube videos and rewatching them or reusing them on the YouTube app when you have premium, that still technically helps the creator. They still reimburse them for it, which is pretty cool. Okay, I'm trying to warn you guys. I'm trying to tell you. Please do not encourage or tell people that there are ways or there are it literally hurts the platform and it hurts me. So I have the power to discourage that from being shared, so I'm going to discourage that because I don't want people to know about it. So I'm telling you now, that's a live chat rule I'm implying, and I'm letting the moderators know. If people are sharing ways of accessing ad blockers, don't allow it because it's not good for anybody. It's not good for me. It's not good for YouTube. It's not good for, which ultimately I think would mean it's not good unless you just want the whole site to be shut down and you don't want it to exist. I guess I don't want those people in my chat if that's your end goal. I should low-key switch to YouTube Music since I'm paying for premium anyways. I'd save me some money monthly on Apple Music. Maybe. Might not be a terrible idea. Since you have a Tesla, it might not matter, but Apple Music is really hit or miss with my car. It doesn't have CarPlay, so it only works like 75% of the time. Yeah, I've heard they're going to add Apple Music to Teslas, but I don't pay for premium connectivity. I just use the Bluetooth on my car, and that works fine. Doomy Doomy says, I download a lot of tech videos on my commutes with premium. I tend to argue back and forth with you guys and Linus especially. Oh, really? Fascinating. I'd love to hear those arguments. Marngel says, even though I have Spotify through a family member, I still use YouTube for music because some of the small artists I follow don't upload most of their music to Spotify. That's true. There are a few artists I have found on YouTube that aren't on Spotify, so I have their videos downloaded. Um, I agree with Hasael. He says the UI is better with Apple, but YouTube Music has a lot of room to grow too, which makes it more interesting. Playlist covers actual profiles to make it easier to share with friends. Yeah, when last time I used YouTube Music, I wasn't very impressed with it. But again, it's not something I spend a lot of time in. I spend a lot of time in Discord. I spend a lot of time in Twitter and the YouTube mobile app when I'm watching videos. Those apps I'm using the user interface a lot with. I'm changing the quality. I'm using picture in picture. I'm in the comment section. If there's an app I spend a lot of time in, I might be willing to pay extra for UI enhancements, but the music app is just like open, play, and then I'm out. That's it. Or for some people it's just Siri, just like play this, done. It's not something like as long as I can open the app and hit play on the song, it's fine. I don't need to pay $10 a month just so the UI is a little bit cleaner. Um, MagSafe is a nice hand warmer. Yes, it is. But I appreciate you guys for supporting directly and Legalized Comedies. I use Spotify to only watch Joe Rogan. I forgot he's only on Spotify. Let's see. Yearly premium is cheaper than a month of cable at Spectrum. Worth it? Yeah, I guess it ultimately depends on how much time you spend on it. I know some people that don't use YouTube all that much, so it's probably not worth it to them. But um, I definitely use YouTube a lot. Like when I'm working, when I'm not working. It's just there's so much content to watch. There's so many channels to get through, especially if you're doing some kind of like handiwork, like I've been working on my house a bit lately. And when you want to know how to do something, the fact that you can just pull up a YouTube video on any subject and it just, you'll get a big catalog of videos explaining how to fix something. The fact that I don't have to sit through an ad when you're looking up like tutorials like that is very, very helpful because a lot of the time those tutorial videos still take too long to get to the point. I'm already impatient with YouTube Premium. I'd be even less patient without it. I've cut out Netflix, I've cut out Prime, I've cut out Hulu. We don't pay for Disney Plus. Don't pay for iCloud anymore. Don't pay for TV Plus. There's very few things we pay for, but YouTube Premium is definitely one of them. Partly because we rent it out to our family members and friends, and that makes it a lot cheaper. Um, Spotify is great for podcasts, I'm sure. Gets the job done. I've learned to live with less, so I'm happy. Any improvements are welcome, of course, but I'm trying to implement digital minimalism in my life. I think that's a good idea when there's so many subscriptions in this world, including Tailosive Tech Plus. I'm probably part of the problem, but I hope you guys don't feel pressured to sign up for it. That's not my intention. It's just another way of giving back to those who support. Because, honestly, I'm very grateful for those who super chat, but I wanted to mention that, like, before we did the Tailosive Tech Plus thing with the memberships, there were a lot of people that would super chat and all they would get out of it is just one message answered. And I was like, okay, well, there's clearly a lot of people willing to support me, but I would like them to get a little bit more than just one message read for $5 or $10, or some people do $20. It's like they should get a little bit more for $20, which is why I'm okay with no one super chatting, but providing behind the scenes content and all that stuff for the people that are willing to support. I feel better about that direct support when there's more being offered, outro credits and moderator access or shout outs like people on Tailosive Tech Ultra, which I still haven't been able to get a hold of, but Riley McGinnis and Tyler Forte, special shout out to those guys for being crazy enough to sign up for Ultra. But I want to reach out to them to connect and schedule a collab, but I haven't been able to contact them. So I'm grateful for you guys, and I hope that it doesn't come across as like there's too many memberships. But I'm really in favor of people like finding the memberships that really matter to you, only subscribing to the ones that honestly make a difference and that you can utilize. Like exactly like you said, Hasael. If you, it's like Apple Music is nice, but can I get basically the same thing with YouTube Music? Then yeah, I'll save money and do that. Um, Prime should include all of Amazon Prime's music library. Does it not? I thought it used to. Did they change that? Sam K says, I use YouTube more than any other service, but I'll bite the bullet with the ads. I refuse to pay for it when it works amazing for free, and I already have to pay for a dozen other subscriptions. Fair enough. If you can tolerate the ads, that's fair. There's certain services like we signed up for because we have T-Mobile home internet, which I'm still using, by the way. I'm still live streaming through T-Mobile. They gave us the cheap tier of Paramount Plus, and there's ads. And I don't use Paramount Plus as much as YouTube, but the ads are annoying. But I just it's on the TV, so it feels easier to put up with ads on the TV because when there's an ad playing, I just mute the TV and go on my phone. And I'll be honest, sometimes there's been ads that have shown up that have made me really want to buy whatever the product or whatever the advertiser, usually food. That's my weakness. So when I see a restaurant commercial show up on Paramount Plus, I'm kind of like, oh man, that looks kind of good. Now I want to go there. And that's the point of advertising. It's supposed to let you think about other products and services. So that's how Paramount Plus can be cheaper because they have ad supported tiers and they'll offer those tiers to people that sign up for T-Mobile and that kind of stuff. So I don't watch YouTube TV. No, I've never tried it, but it sounds very much like cable TV, which I'm not a fan of. Um, I do hate the ads, but I'm not similar to Sam K. I'm not willing to pay the $10 a month to get the no ad supported version of Paramount Plus. They bug me. I think the reason they bug me on YouTube is because even if you have premium, there's still sponsorships. So like I would be very frustrated if I had to sit through two ads and then the video started and then a sponsored ad read is like, oh my God. But I've noticed that steering me towards other channels. Like I find myself watching smaller and smaller channels now because they're less likely to have sponsors in them and they tend to be more genuine. And I like channels that feel more real and honest than channels that feel very overproduced and very calculated. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to cause drama, but I clicked onto a channel that had a big following, a large subscriber count. And I started watching the video and I was like, this just feels so corporate. It just feels so businessy. It doesn't feel like a person. It feels like an algorithm that we're catering towards. And they scripted it a certain way and they put in the ad read in a certain time. And it doesn't feel, I think what people like about YouTube is that OG YouTube feel, broadcast yourself. It wasn't super calculated. It wasn't super high budget. It was just giving the individual a voice. And I was watching that channel and I was just like, I'm not like invested in this. I'm not finding like to me it feels like you're watching cable TV when the quality of the content reaches a certain point. Like it gets so overproduced, it gets so calculated that I'm like I'm not even interested in what they have to say. I just feel like I'm watching cable television, which I never liked. Whereas I find these smaller channels and a lot of the time these smaller channels are filming things on their phone and they got very basic microphones and not necessarily the fanciest editing style or animations or anything, but they just feel real. It feels like a person, a real human being is telling you what they think and how they feel, and they pick up on little details and little things that in my opinion that's what I've kind of felt like in the YouTube space, is that sometimes the most important factors are the little details that someone brings up that you didn't realize were there. When you find a channel that highlights something that goes, see, I noticed that. Or I noticed that, but I didn't put words to it. It could be something very simple, like the rounded design of the MacBook Pro chassis. It's rounded on the bottom, but flat on the top, and that helps it be more comfortable to pick up and to hold. Or being able to not use additional accessories or additional dongles on a product. Little design choices, or me saying like I don't like this camera bump because of how much it wobbles. Even if you buy a case, it still wobbles, and that can make wireless charging harder. Little highlights like that stand out, and I feel like you tend to get that more when you're not being overwhelmed with overly produced content that's too high production value, that's trying to show off what they spent on their camera gear or how fancy their lighting is, or the sponsorship, of course, that they want to dive into before they actually explain the content. Let's talk about Raid Shadow Legends or NordVPN. It gets less personal. So I'm very comfortable with the idea of my channel not growing or not getting bigger and bigger, because I want to normalize what we have here, which I'm really happy with, which is like channels that are big enough to pay the bills but not big enough to lose their identity, like a small channel that can get by with what they have, and they're not obsessed with growth. They're not obsessed with having to buy better, greater, bigger. Just sustainability, I guess, is what I like, and that's what I want to get more comfortable with, because there's been people that have watched my videos that then have become content creators that I now watch, and I really enjoy it, and I find that content more interesting, and knowing that when you have premium you're supporting them better and you don't have to put up with the ads, that just makes it so much more satisfying, I guess. Let's see. YouTube TV is exactly that, cable TV over the internet. It's a very good cable service, but if you don't like cable, you won't like YouTube TV. Yeah, that's pretty much what I figured. This is one marathon stream you're doing. Oh, this is nothing. I went for 3 hours on the last live stream. Today's video is sponsored by FD. Oh, God. Let's see. Thoughts on paid reviews? Yeah, I usually don't like them. I'm not trying to say that they're completely useless, but it very much taints, I think, a lot of recommendations when you know that the person is getting paid just straight up cash to talk about it. I feel a little bit differently about like referral programs or like reviews where the product was sent to them, because you don't have to sign a contract to do those things. Referral programs typically anybody can do. But when you've like signed paperwork that commits you to a certain price, and typically when you've signed that paperwork, it means that you've agreed to say certain things or not say certain things. To me, it's like if you've signed a contract, you're not going to disclose with your audience what's in that contract. We don't know. Maybe they just agreed to pay you, but you can say whatever you want. But a lot of the time, that's not how companies work. They're not like, okay, we're going to pay you a certain amount, but you can say anything you want about it. It's like, can that happen? Yes, I'm sure it has, but we don't know because they're not going to put the contract in the video. Referral program or being sent the product, that's different. It's like, okay, the company did send me this product, but I don't like this part about it, and you can say that because you didn't sign a contract with them. You didn't agree to certain terms. So that's one differing factor that I just want to disclose, because I have benefited from like the Mint Mobile referral program. I have used that, and I've used Aptera referral points and stuff. So I don't want to come across as double standard. I just wanted you guys to know where my line is. I won't sign a contract with a brand to agree to say certain things. If a company wants to send me something to try out and they are okay with me saying whatever I want, then I agree to it. And I'm interested in the product, obviously. It can't be a product I don't care about. I will do those. But if you're getting paid, then there's usually a contract involved, and then you don't really know exactly what was involved, what you can and can't say. And that kind of taints the review process. Again, not trying to say that any paid review is useless. I'm sure there's valuable information even in paid reviews, but I don't do them for that reason. Um, let's see. James, hey, I haven't heard from you from a while. Good to see you. James Sanders says, we have a relationship. You're just not a face on the screen. You're not just a face on the screen. Oh, I see. Yes, I would agree in that way. Yeah, sure. People get blacklisted too when they say things that the company doesn't like. That's true. So when you're reviewing a product because they're now your client and they're paying you, that even if it's subconscious could affect your recommendation. Whereas if you were sent a product that you didn't sign a contract for, it's like I could burn this bridge, and it doesn't really matter because I'm not getting paid. I just got the product. To me, that's not as biased or not as double standard, because if you don't like the product, you don't care if you're going to burn the relationship. And if you like the product, then you'll want to maintain the relationship, sure, but you have an incentive to be honest in that situation. When you get money involved, that's when you start to have motivation to not be honest, and that's where I draw the line. Um, did you do something early on in your channel to get more subscribers? Or did they just build slowly over time? Curious how you went from zero to hundreds of thousands. No, not early on. I started doing YouTube videos in 2008, and basically no one watched them until 2015, late 2015, maybe early 2016 is when people actually started watching. So there was a good 7 years of no one watching. Literally, I would work for hours and hours on a video, post it, and it would sit at zero. Not 5 views, not 10 views, zero for days. It would I'd put it out there for the public, anybody can watch it, nothing. Get no response. Um I think as long as the reviewer is transparent is fine. Yeah, paid or not, I hope the reviewer would be transparent, but the likelihood of them being transparent, in my opinion, goes down when a contract is signed. Because usually contracts are not just, we'll pay you to talk about this, but say whatever you want. I've seen brand deal contracts before. I won't expose anybody, but I'm just saying I've seen the contracts. I know how they work, and they typically don't give you that much free reign, especially if it's a paid one. In my experience, they tend to give more free reign if it's not paid. If you didn't sign a contract, then they tend to be like, say whatever you want. If you don't like it, say it. I've worked with brands, like I reviewed several brands' products for my Tesla. We got some accessories for that. And I got a lot of offers, but I was very selective with who I worked with because I wanted to make sure, are you okay if I don't like this product? Are you going to be comfortable with that? Keep in mind, I don't sign contracts. And they tried to get me to with some of them. Some of the brands reached out and be like, hey, would you like to make this much off of reviewing our product? And I was like, no, I won't sign a contract. But if you want me to try the product and I'll tell you what I really think, then I'll do it. So that's where I draw my line. Other channels are a little different, but let's see. Did you do? Oh no, I read that. But yeah, it took many, many years of trial and error before anybody watched my videos, and then took several years after that before I was making enough off of YouTube to actually quit my job. Um, yeah, that's true. Only Apple will get a lot of attention when they blacklist people because they're being objective. Yeah. Yeah, it gets awkward very quickly, huh? Speaking of Mint Mobile, have you gotten your Ryan Reynolds Christmas card and stick-on tattoo? Yes, I did. I didn't put my tattoo on, but I did get it in the mail. Let's see. I noticed when scrolling through your uploads from around 2018, you had a Ridge Wallet review where they sent it to you. Have you done any newer reviews like that? Yeah, yeah. The some of the accessories I got for my Tesla were like that, and I've done an updated Ridge Wallet review. I think in 2020, they sent me some new wallets that were different from the first one I got. So I reviewed it again because I just wanted people to know, like, yeah, I did that one random product review all those years ago, but now I'm still using it and I still really enjoy it. So I did a little update video later. I see what you were saying with the paid reviews, but these things with referral programs and corporations sending products, is that those types of things allow for channels to be more sustainable? Oh yeah, no, I'm not against people doing it. For the record, let me be clear on that. I'm not against people doing paid reviews if that's what they want to do. If that's how you want to run your business, all the better to you. That's the great thing about YouTube is we have so much diversity, so much variety, so many different tactics of channel. That's all fine. I'm just saying why I don't do it. I prefer not to. If you want to do it, no problem. But I appreciate channels that can make a living and cover all their expenses without doing those types of things. But if you feel like your channel needs those types of things to survive or to grow, then that's your choice. It's your channel. Run it the way you want. With Apple having NDAs with creators like MKBHD, do you think those creators are being as honest as they claim? I think they're being as honest as they can. There's definitely some channels that are so big that they're not going to get blacklisted because they're just so popular Apple wouldn't remove them. But there's smaller channels that do get blacklisted because they didn't say the right things. But ultimately, I respect Apple's choice. Like, if Apple doesn't want to send me products, that's fine. I don't think that's wrong. Of course, it makes perfect sense. Apple wants to send their products to people that are going to make their products look good. So if you make their products look bad, Apple doesn't want to send you their products. You say, well, that's bias. Yeah, of course it is. Why would they send their products to people that make them look bad, even if it's true? Does that mean Apple doesn't welcome honest criticism? I guess. But Apple's going to get honest criticism whether they send you the product or not. So if there's going to be someone that gets the product early, they got to pick them on some kind of merit, some kind of preference. Which mobile plan do you use, and it's the coverage strong enough? So because of the referral program, I'm on the unlimited plan, but I'm thinking of downgrading because I don't honestly use that much data. I haven't been using the maxed out plan. If I didn't have the referral program, I would just use the 4 gig plan. I honestly don't use that much data on cellular. But anyway, I appreciate your guys' questions. I could do this all night if I'm not careful, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But I appreciate you all. But not to worry, we have a new tech video that is being published right now. So thank you to everybody who signed up for Tailosive Tech Pro, by the way. But your name will be added not to this video, but to the one after. So link in the chat with today's new tech video. It's about Twitter verification. There's a pretty long skit in it, and there's a returning character that has been gone in the skits for quite some time. And he's very happy to say, good morning. So enjoy the tech video. Feel free to check it out. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent evening. Take care all. Bye-bye.